You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
You know what drives me crazy?
What?
Outrageous mobile phone bills.
Oh my gosh, I know. It's ridiculous, but thank goodness there's Mint Mobile.
Oh, you mean the one with Ryan Reynolds and all those commercials? Have you used them?
Yeah. Earlier this year, my dad entered a retirement home and we needed to get him something reliable that also wasn't going to break the bank. So we set him up a Mint Mobile contract. Get this, $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan or more. And it was so easy.
Wait, $15 a month? How do they even do that? Is it super limited data or something?
No, not at all. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Mint Mobile is able to keep their prices low because they sell their wireless services online only.
Oh, so what they save by not having retail stores and salespeople, they can pass on to you.
You got it. For us, Dad already had a phone that he liked. We were worried we weren't going to be able to bring it over, but their awesome customer service reps helped me set it all up with his phone in just a few minutes. It was such a relief.
That's awesome and so affordable. Why don't you tell our listeners how they can also ditch overpriced wireless and get 3 months of premium wireless service for $15 a month with Mint Mobile?
Just head to mintmobile.com/queens. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/queens.
$45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. So speed slower above 40 gigabytes on an unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
Hi, everybody. Katie here from Queen's Podcast. We are taking a little winter break to celebrate the holidays with our families, but we were like, we gotta give y'all something to listen to, especially if you're traveling on today, Christmas Day. We hope you will enjoy this replay of the life and times of the country's grandmother, everybody's American sweetheart, Betty White. This episode was our first episode of 2022. 10 days after she passed away is when this came out, and I had a really great time re-listening to it. I hope you all let Betty put you in the holiday spirit. And if you're new to this podcast, we curse like sailors. So if you don't like your history mixed in with a couple of F-bombs, this will not be the show for you. Okay, everybody, we will see y'all in 2025. Cheers, bitches. So before we start out the episode with who is she, why don't we say who she's not, Nathan?
Yeah, right. She accomplished so much in her life.
I know.
What was she not? She wasn't a criminal. Oh. She wasn't a bigot.
No.
She wasn't homophobic.
Definitely not.
Pretty much everything we love here at Queen's Podcast, right?
She had all the qualities that we adore here in this show. Not to mention what she was a producer, a writer, an actor, a mentor, an activist. Nathan, who are we talking about today?
It pains me to say it, but it's Betty White.
Yeah, of course it's Betty White.
I'm already cheersing.
Yeah.
I'm already cheersing you right now.
We are recording this on January 9th. We, of course, lost her. I guess the world has been without her 10 days now.
10 days too many.
She was the queen of TV. Some called her the queen of sitcoms. Some called her the queen of game shows. Could call her the queen of America's heart.
Everything.
So, of course, we're going to talk today about the legendary Betty White.
So, what we're drinking today is what one of her friends described as her favorite drink. Mm-hmm. She did like vodka and lemon, which, #same.
Yeah.
Just lots of vodka on the rocks with lemon, but she also liked a martini. And if there's some gal that I've got to make a martini for, it's going to be fucking Betty White.
Love it.
So 2.5 ounces of vodka, a half an ounce of dry vermouth, half an ounce of olive juice. You shake it on the rocks and then pour it in a nice martini glass and a fucking cheers, bitches.
The Dirty Betty cocktail. I love it.
Dirty Betty.
So, Nathan, are you ready to get into the fabulous life of Betty White?
You ain't got to get ready if you stay ready.
Why don't you get us started?
So, Betty Marion White was born January 17th, 1922 in Oak Park, Illinois. She's a Capricorn, if you're taking notes here. Lots of mental and physical stamina, not afraid to put themselves out there, and always trust their instincts.
It's our girl.
This is our girl. This is her. Her parents, their names were Horace White and Christine Tess. Daddy-O was an electrical engineer, which may come in handy, and Mom was a homemaker.
A lot of people think that, the name Betty, that's usually short for Elizabeth or something.
Yeah.
But her legal name at birth was Betty.
When she was little over 1 year old, so she was like 1.5, the Whites pack up and move on west to the suburbs of Los Angeles.
They just moved out west because that's where the money was, which might be important, being that this is the late 1930s and
I see where this is going.
Think back to your history lessons. What was happening in the late 1930s?
It's real depressing.
But
The Great Depression.
Yes. Yes.
I'm trying to
everyone
it's a Great
broke.
Depression.
Let's eat cardboard. No, the U.S. history, late 20s to mid 30s. I think I misspoke earlier. Late 20s to mid 30s is the Great Depression. And everyone was depressed because they didn't have any fucking money.
No, and all jokes aside, this is like a huge bummer in world history. Everything crashed. Everything was off. Nobody had food. Nobody had money.
You hear some really heartbreaking stories of the Great Depression. I've read stories about mothers that couldn't afford to feed all their children, so they literally sold their children to farms that needed farm hands, and people were scraping the wallpaper off the wall to have something to eat.
Oh God.
It was a very dark time, which actually sent me down rabbit hole number 1.
Not surprised.
Yes. Because in history class, whenever we were in high school and stuff, we only learned about it from a U.S. standpoint, but the Great Depression was international. Mr. Worldwide, much like Pitbull. Yeah.
Did you go there?
I'm sorry. The international decline of the economy really hit Germany before it even hit the U.S., which actually had to do with the rise of the unsettled population bringing in Hitler. Let me dig myself out of that rabbit hole back to Betty White and everybody.
So what we're getting at is everybody poor. Except, at least in Betty's retelling of her childhood, it wasn't that bad. They didn't suffer too much. Yeah. She said she was spoiled in her childhood. She said it.
So unless she is just painting a rosy picture, it seems like her parents really sheltered her from the hardships that were going on.
She was a kid, so of course you shelter them from that, right?
But not all children had the luxury of being sheltered from it.
So, like we said, her dad was an electrical engineer, which pretty much can be used in a lot of facets here. Her dad was able to feed his family by selling crystal radios.
It sounds like something that would be sold in Goop, if I'm being honest.
Okay, so Betty White's not a witch.
Okay.
So a crystal radio is run on crystals that produce radio waves. So crystal radio makes sense. So her dad was a witch. Queen's podcast statement. Her dad was a witch.
Yes, Betty White was a witch. End of episode. Good night, guys. Dad would make these radios and trade them for things like food and stuff. But if there was a family that was in need and they couldn't pay or they didn't have anything to barter and they needed a radio, he would trade them for dogs.
Same.
Yeah. I mean,
same.
Which really helped the families in need, because I think Betty White in her biography said something like, radios don't eat, but dogs do. So it would kind of be
Ah,
like one less mouth to feed for these families.
that
And
makes sense.
Betty was her parents' only kid, and she was really close to both of them. Betty would also say that her mother had this impeccable comedic timing,
Uh-huh.
which this tracks.
No, it absolutely tracks. That's one thing about Betty, that she's got that timing.
Yes.
In her memoir, If You Ask Me, Betty talks about how every summer her family would go and visit in Sierra Nevada.
Like
They
she
would
had
go out.
cousins and aunts and uncles out
They
there.
would all go out camping. This is not glamping. They had donkeys.
Yes.
I mean, that is not glamping if you've
No.
got donkeys.
No.
I talked about taking all these donkeys down to the campsite. You couldn't take your car down there. So,
Yeah.
I mean, this was a
You
trek.
had to take a donkey down there, and they would stay at the campsites for 3 weeks each summer.
Katie is not about it.
I looked up Sierra Nevada. It looks beautiful. I found some Airbnbs nearby with a great view that I would love to go to, but I'm not doing that. I don't sleep outside, and especially not for 3 weeks straight.
You peasants.
No, to each their own. I'm just really scared of like creepy crawlies.
Oh, okay. I mean, scorpions are a thing. Scorpions and snakes and beetles. Oh
Oh
my.
my.
But Betty White, unlike Katie, loved these trips. Dad was a huge lover of nature, and she's super duper close to her parents. So she just did whatever they did.
These trips meant a lot to her because for the rest of her life, or the rest of her young life at least, she dreamed of having one job. Nathan, what was her dream job growing up?
Actress.
No, she wanted to be a park ranger
Like, what?
because of these trips and her dad's passion for nature. She grew to love it. And so she's thinking, well, I want to work to preserve nature for the next generations. So I'm going to become a forest ranger.
But guess what, guys? Bag of dicks. Women can't be forest rangers.
Even forestry was a bag of dicks back then.
Women can't wear camo. Ugh.
I don't think forest rangers wear camo, Nathan.
Maybe they do.
Maybe they do. I've never thought about the credentials of being a forest ranger in the 1940s or 30s or whatever. But yeah, women weren't allowed that career path. Gross.
So she attended Beverly Hills High School, but for real, it wasn't quite as glamorous.
No, not yet at least.
No, it's the Great Depression. Sorry.
Yeah, but she got
So
really
she-
into the arts.
Yeah.
And tell us, Nathan.
She ended up writing her senior play for the class of 1939. She wrote herself as the lead role and narrator.
I am the writer. I am the lead actress. I am the narrator. The rest of you get in line.
I fucking love this for
I know.
her.
I love it too, yes. As soon as she graduated high school, she tried to enter showbiz immediately. She started singing songs for this new experimental medium called television.
Ooh. So this type of work was experimental because people didn't really know what this electronic box that
Right.
sat in your living room, like what?
Yeah, people were literally like, why do we need radio with pictures? Her first gig singing on TV, the broadcast only reached to down the street or something like that. Like when we talk about local TV, it was like within the building local. Like it was,
Like in the premise.
yeah. So her first gig wasn't gonna make her a star. It was like, oh, people in the building might know who I am.
Oh,
Ooh.
fancy that. But Betty hopped around from job to job for a couple of years. She tried to be a model, and they told her she wasn't photogenic enough.
Fuck that, because she was
Right?
like that smile, those dimples, like,
that face.
she
Like,
was
seriously.
she was so cute. Like, go back and look at pictures of Betty White in her younger years.
adorable.
I have to assume she had kind of more of a square jaw. And I guess
Yeah.
like a lot of the starlets of the time maybe maybe a more oval face or something
Yeah.
like that. But she wasn't not photogenic. She was
Okay, she
adorable.
was photogenic until she died. Gorgeous.
Anyway, we can. I feel like that could be a whole rant. So let's move
Yes,
on.
it could. But she was a commercial model. So
Yeah.
back then, commercials and TV weren't quite what we think what they are today. Commercials, they did live. Like they went on and said, hey, this new food, like they literally Vanna White it in front of you.
Yeah. They would literally be like in the middle of their scene and be like, and now a word from our sponsors, and just turn around and there was a model being a sponsor. And
So
yes.
I wish this was the part where we talk about her career just taking off, but it's not. This is World War II. It's the Great Depression, and now it's war.
Ugh.
Good God, y'all.
What is it good for?
Absolutely nothing. So she graduated in 1939 and entered the war in 1941. And it's like everyone's career was put on hold.
Right. Like who's thinking about acting when Hitler is out there Hitlering, you know?
Yeah, killing people. You got to drop what you're doing and fight for the greater good. I mean, I totally get it.
Yeah.
So Betty felt like she needed to do her part. Our girl volunteered to support the troops. She hopped in a big ass truck and drove essentials to the troops stationed in Santa Monica and Hollywood, of course. And by essentials, I mean like toothpaste, soap, and candy.
You heard it first.
I gotta have my Snickers bar.
I thought this was really cute. You know how like when troops are stationed away, the USO, like Bob Hope, would go out and do little shows and sketches. She did that like kind of on the local level. Her and the other girls would put on little sketches for the troops. And then they would also attend farewell dances for the boys that were about to get shipped off. And so she would just be charming and drive a big truck. And that's what she was doing for her war effort, you know?
I love her. Making everybody smile since
1941 or whatever. And she looks adorable in her little army getup.
I bet so. Like, she's not photogenic. Like, fuck you.
Get the fuck out of here. Anyway.
So, while serving, someone else noticed that she was cute. Her first husband named Dick.
Dick
Barker. You have to say it with a room.
Dick Barker, yeah.
So they married in 1945 and they divorced in 1945.
Oh, cool.
But he was a country guy, and after the war, he bought a chicken farm and wanted to just live off the land. I know that kind of guy. Like, I know that kind of
nature lover and an animal lover. So at first,
nothing wrong with that.
At first, she was like, that sounds really nice. And then she got there and she was like, good God, what have I done? She loved camping, but I think once she got there, she realized, oh, I like camping 3 weeks out of the year.
I don't like chickens everywhere.
I can't live this way.
And
so,
divorce, kind of controversial back then. Most circles back then, women that were divorced in the 40s, oh my gosh, social suicide.
Yeah. I think it was smart of her to get out of the marriage. I don't think it was super smart of her to think that she was ever going to be happy in that life, but we all make mistakes.
Yeah.
I just applaud her for not just like folding to societal demands and being like, well, I've got to stay with it and have kids, and then living a life where she wasn't going to be happy. She said in her memoir that she never had kids. And she is from a different time, so I don't necessarily agree with this. And she said in her memoir, she was like, a lot of women of modern day are not going to agree with me on this, but in my eyes, I could either be a mother and give 100% to that, or I could have a career and give 100% to that. I was never going to be able to do both. And she chose a career. And that's right for some people.
No, that is 100% what I got from her.
Yeah.
She knew that she wasn't going to be a mother. She was going to mother her career.
Yes. And be a mother to hundreds of animals in her life. But anyway,
right.
Her parents took her back in. Like, she moved back in with her parents, which also I think just goes to show again how supportive they were. and how tight-knit, because there were a lot of parents back then that would have been like, no, you are divorced.
Bye.
You are not bringing that shame upon this family. But her parents took her back in, and it doesn't seem to have been drama. So,
right? After the war, Betty was ready. Betty was ready. Betty was ready. She hit the movie studios. She pursued her dream of being an actress, besides Forest Ranger. Well, we'll let that one slide.
Women couldn't be forest rangers, but they could be famous actresses, and that's what she wanted to do.
So that's what she did. She was doing whatever fucking job that she could, even unpaid word. Like, her first post-divorce job was at Bliss Hayden Little Theater in a show called Dear Ruth.
Can't say that I've heard of it.
An actor turned agent named Lane Allen saw her and told her that she needed to pursue acting more seriously.
And she's like, yeah, dude, that's what I'm trying to do.
She's like, duh. Do you not see me over here on this stage? Yeah, she liked what he said. In fact, she liked Lane so much that in 1947, she married him. That's a big leap from like agent to marriage.
Yeah.
But it seems like this was a little bit more of a love match than the first one, to be honest with you.
It worked longer, but just slightly. It worked slightly longer than the first one.
Well, I mean, moral of the story, Lane wanted kids. Betty wanted a career. We just talked about this. So that was Betty's decision, was like, no, I want a career. And so they divorced by 1949.
This is her second divorce, and she's like not even in her 30s yet. This probably put a bitter taste in her mouth towards romantic relationships, thinking no man is ever going to want to love me and allow me to pursue my passions. I think for the next long time, she's like, I'm just not even going to fuck around with dating. I'm not going to fuck around with love because I can't have career and a relationship too, which is really sad. But for the time, that's what all signs were pointing to. Nathan, you know what my favorite thing about this time of year is?
Buying gifts for your friends like me.
Okay, well, yes, but also I love getting all cozy on the couch with a glass of wine or maybe a mug of hot cider.
Or getting cozy in a really, really nice cardigan. Like this one I have on right now from Quince.
That is a gorgeous cardigan, Nathan. And look at this, a gorgeous throw blanket I have from Quince. You know, Quince really lets you treat yourself.
And your loved ones.
To real luxury goods at prices that everyone can afford.
Like Quince's Mongolian cashmere sweaters, which start at only $50.
This throw blanket, if I would have seen this in the store, I would have just assumed it was like double the price that it actually was. How do they keep their prices so low?
Quince partners directly with top factories, and they cut out the cost of the middleman, which passes the savings on to you.
And on top of all that, they only use factories that use safe, ethical practices. So you know they're on the nice, not the naughty list. So you can get yourself and your Secret Santa something really, really nice.
Gift luxury this holiday season without the luxury price tag. Go to quince.com/queenspod for 365-day returns plus free shipping on your order.
That's Quince, QUINCE.com/queenspod to get free shipping and 365 days return.
This episode is brought to you by Google Gemini. With the Gemini app, you can talk live and have a real-time conversation with an AI assistant. It's great for all kinds of things, like if you want to practice for an upcoming interview, ask for advice on things to do in a new city, or brainstorm creative ideas. And by the way, this script was actually read by Gemini. Download the Gemini app for iOS and Android today. Must be 18 plus to use Gemini Live.
Betty was still hustling to get her big break. Whether it's radio, theater, that weird boxy thing called TV, she was going to make it some way, somehow. And she finally got her big break in a commercial during the hit radio comedy show called The Great Gildersleeve.
Gildersleeve.
Sounds like a laugh riot. Our girl, Betty, literally just uttered one word for the commercial and everybody was hooked. And it was parquet.
What the fuck is parquet?
Parquet is a margarine. Back in the day, they were like, oh, butter's bad for you. Try margarine. And parquet is the margarine. So after this, bit parts are rolling in because she's that girl that could just show up and be like, parquet, and just say one word.
Everyone's just like, that was delightful.
I love her. Like,
wow.
That is legit her brand, right? So Betty tried breaking through to the movies, but again, she's quote unquote not photogenic.
Which I guess means she's not pretty enough, which, are you fucking serious?
Gorgeous.
She's just so adorable. Back, in like the 30s and 40s, these like starlets that if you're comparing her next to like Vivian Leigh or something, okay, she didn't look like Vivian Leigh, but who the fuck does look like Vivian Leigh? Right. Or who's Mommy Dearest? No More Wire. Joan Crawford. These people, but she looks like the girl next door. But if you fast forward into the late 40s and the 50s, the girl next door ends up being a very popular prototype. I mean, just look at Debbie Reynolds,
Right.
That's why she's not getting that. I don't think anybody thought she was ugly, but saying like you're not photogenic enough was just a nice way of saying that you're not like glamorous.
So she tried her hand at this TV thing and started co-hosting a variety show, which would go on to set the stage for the rest of her career.
Yeah.
So remember how we said that TV was like in an experimental phase? So this variety show is a really good example of her career. Like, wildly popular DJ named Al Jarvis was given a TV show, and they call it Hollywood on Television.
So by the time that Betty joined this show, it had already been like a wildly popular radio show that they changed to a TV show, and they were just like, we need a girl. And I guess Betty just happened to be the right place at the right time. She's like, I do happen to be a girl.
And I want to make money.
And they were like, oh, it's the butter girl, the margarine chick. Yeah, Nathan, tell us about the recording schedule for television or Hollywood on Television.
5.5 hours a day. Like, I love you, Katie, but if I had to record with you for 5.5 hours, I would still love you after all of it.
But how many days a week?
My God, 6 days. Like, only one day off.
Days a week, 5.5. I know we all work, 40 hours a week or whatever, but this is like recording. It's like live TV for 5.5 hours a day, 6 days. And nobody knew what to do. So they would have, they'd play the records and just like everybody just sitting there listening to the records. Then they would be like, I guess we're going to have like a magician on, a tap dancer. And then somebody one day turned to Betty and was like, can you sing? And she was like, I can sing. Can I? And so then it also became a reoccurring feature where she would sing on episodes just because you had to fill 5.5 hours, 6 days a week.
Full of shit.
Somehow.
This is a huge career move for Betty at this point.
No more unpaid bit parts anymore for Miss White.
Yeah, and then Al Jarvis ended up leaving the show. And in 1952, Betty decided to host the show her damn self.
So when Al Jarvis was there, she was making $50 a week. When he left, she was making $300 a week. That roughly comes out to $300 a week in modern day would be making about $200,000 a year, which for a TV star now isn't a whole lot.
A whole lot.
For a girl who has been twice divorced, living with her parents, to now be like this out of nowhere, this self-sufficient working actress was huge for her, is what we're getting.
I know. And she was the first female talk show host. Yeah, and she was even nominated for an Emmy for Best Actress. So, fun fact, Emmys are not what you think about today. Like, Emmys were your body of work throughout the year as opposed to like this one show.
It was really interesting because now when somebody's nominated, you're nominated because of
Elizabeth Elizabeth Moss in The Handmaid's Tale. Like, it's not her whole year's worth of work.
One
It's
role.
just that.
I thought that was really interesting.
But she didn't win. But it's cool. She'll win one another day. She's got plenty of time.
A friend that also worked on Hollywood on Television with her, they started a production company called Bandy Productions. They decided to make their own show. There was this reoccurring sketch on their current show about this married couple who would like get into shenanigans and just cute little sketch show. So they made that into its own TV show.
Life with Elizabeth
was one of the executive producers, which she wasn't the first woman to produce a television show ever, but she was definitely one of the first. And she actually had creative control over that show, which, I mean, until Lucille Ball, you know, for a woman to star, produce, and get creative control, that wasn't really a done thing. So I just think that is so, so cool.
Yeah, Lucille Ball, Desilu Productions was in like 1957. And so it's like 5 years after Betty White had her own production studio. So
simmer on that. Her and Lucille Ball would actually go on to be very good friends. They had a lot in common.
Of course. Strong, powerful women who know what the fuck is funny. Yes. So Life with Elizabeth was syndicated across the country, and the country fell in love with this like bubbly, hilarious Betty White. Like, I remember looking at scenes from it, and she would just cut that look. She's so
just got this sparkle in her eye, because she's supposed to play this wife that's like always getting into trouble, you know, very of its time, but like she just has this way of captivating people and just being like, she's fucking adorable.
Yeah, I know. It's that little twinkle.
The country fell in love with her. One quote that I thought was really cute of hers is she was like, actually, I prefer being a TV star to a movie star, because when you're a TV star, you're in people's homes every day. And so they feel like they know you. They feel like you're approachable, as opposed to whenever you're a film star, they don't feel like they know you because you're not in their homes. You're, you know, on the big screen, and it feels so much more intimidating. So she loved that people felt connected to her in that way.
I totally see that.
But Nathan, what did this show bring Betty in 1952?
An Emmy. So we don't want to spend an entire episode talking about every single show that Betty would ever be in and every single moment of her life, because it would be a 3-hour show.
A 3-hour show. So we don't want to spend the entire episode just naming off all the shows she was on and all the awards she won, because then it would just literally be a show of us listing off names of shows. So we're just going to hit like the high points, like the things that really solidified her career. So the next big talking point, Betty White got a show called The Betty White Show in 1953. They were like, Betty, this is going to take a lot out of you, because it's going to be every day for 30 minutes every day. So 30 minutes 5 times a week. And she was like...
And she laughed.
I don't know who the fuck you think you're talking to. Like,
I did 5.5 hours per day.
I think I can handle. Oh, no, not 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week.
So this was a big deal, because Betty, still being a woman, she has a uterus. She had total creative control. Yeah, and she hired a female director, Betty, so she would warm up in front of the audience and get the audience hyped. So she's giving a live performance, and she's the star, and she's going out there and hyping up the audience.
Yeah, if you go to like the Jimmy Fallon show today or something, before Jimmy comes out, they'll usually send a comedian out to get everybody, you know, get them
riled up,
get them in the mood.
Yeah.
Yeah. But for Betty to go out and do it on their own, people were like, you don't have to do this, but she enjoyed it.
So sadly, the show didn't last long and actually earned Betty her first controversy. Remember, this is like 1950s pre-civil rights, deep Jim Crow South bullshit. And Betty had a tap dancer and singer named Arthur Duncan on as a regular person. And Duncan happened to be a black man. And in the South, this was a super unpopular move because
racism. Have you gone back and watched the videos of Arthur Duncan performing on the Betty White show?
He is amazing.
He is so fucking cute. I could just
He's
kiss him.
cute,
He's just cute
talented,
as a
can
button.
sing, can dance, can do all of it. Why not put him on a TV show?
He's entertaining as hell to watch. And that's exactly what Betty was like. She didn't get the controversy at all. And the NBC, the station that she was on, they told her, they were like, having Arthur on is hurting ratings in the South. And it's so hurting ratings overall. And they advised her, have him on less. And she was like, oh, I hear you, but I'm going to have him on more now because he is super talented and fuck you hoes.
Raising the roof right now, if y'all don't know, because she literally was like, no, he's talented. He's amazing. And it just so happens that he's black. Like, it has no bearing on how talented and amazing this person is.
Her exact quote of the time was, I'm sorry, deal with it. Or live with it.
Yes.
I'm sorry, live with it.
Yes. So she dropped her mic, is what Katie was saying. The show was canceled after 2 years, but Betty never regretted that decision. She
definitely ended up on the right side of history.
Yeah, she ended up being a huge advocate for racial injustice and all of that. Like, she was very good activist on that.
And Arthur Duncan, who would go on to have a very successful career as a dancer, to this day still credits Betty White for his jumping off point of his career.
So Betty snapped and pivot. So she pivoted and she knew that she was really good at hosting shows, especially variety shows. So she knew how to interview people, but now she was going to be on the other side of it. Televised game shows were becoming a huge thing.
Yes. In the 60s, that really took off as a platform of entertainment. I love the Game Show Network.
We both warmed up for this episode by watching game shows with Betty White on it.
I love the Game Show Network. I love watching game
Me
shows
too.
anyway. I would love, Nathan, I really want to one day put together a team to go on Family Feud.
Oh.
Would you ever consider going on Family Feud with me?
Yes. How many game shows
so
could
good.
we be on together? That would be horrible.
Oh my God.
The Amazing Race, we'd be just yelling at each other.
No, I'm not. I would be so bad at that one. But Family Feud, I think I'd be really good on. But no, this was a great medium for her because she is charming. She is funny. She is quick-witted. And I think the quick-witted had a lot to do with her success on continuing to be invited back on to talk shows and game shows.
I mean, this made her a household name. Have you watched Match Game and seen Betty White? Have you seen Password with Betty White?
Yes. And I mean, even into a couple of years before her death, she was still going on these interview shows. People wanted to have her because she was always willing to roll with the gag. She was always committed to the bit, and she was so funny. And she talks about it in her book about how important comedic timing is. She's time it just right and you'll always get a laugh. And I think she learned that from her mother.
I mean, okay, but when you watch the Golden Girls, all they have to do is cut a look to each other. And they just have to look at each other at the right moment and make the right facial expression. Its timing is everything.
I feel like that comedic timing is something that some people, I don't think it can always be taught. You know what I mean?
I know. I feel like you're talking about me.
Obviously. Clearly.
So,
Anyway, back to
NBC noticed how much people liked having her in their homes. And they reached out to her and were like, hey, you want to host the Today Show?
y'all. I don't know if I've ever mentioned on this show before how much I grew up with the Today Show. Growing up, my mom had it on every morning whenever we were getting ready. I still, at Thanksgiving, I had Nathan and some friends over, and I was, talking about the Today Show, and I was like, well, Jenna and Savannah, and, literally everyone that was here was like, who are Jenna and Savannah? And I was like...
My BFFs.
They're hosts on the Today Show. I had no idea that Betty White hosting the Today Show was ever something that was discussed. I was shooketh. Different. But she said no. She said no because she didn't want to move to New York.
Guess who said yes? There was one other lady that we made know of, Barbara Walters.
How different would those two career paths look? It just absolutely blew my mind just how different things would be for Barbara Walters if Betty White would have taken that job. What they say, the reason she turned it down was completely because she was like, I don't want to live in New York. I'm an LA girl. I'm not moving to New York.
I love it.
Which, from somebody that comes from a place that is sunny and hot, if you tried to get me to move to New York, I'd be hesitant as well.
Negative.
It gets cold there.
So, while Betty was making her name as the queen of game shows, she appeared on the show called Password. Password was hosted by a guy named Allen Ludden, who just lost his wife a year before they met, and the two of them hit it off like crazy.
It was obvious.
Yeah. Soon after their first date, he said, I'm gonna marry you. Whoop. Love bomb.
Betty was kind of not into it. She cared about him and she liked spending time with him and she liked dating him. But remember, her last two marriages had been no, you can't have a career on top of being a wife.
And she was a quote unquote career woman back in the day. And it was no, women can have jobs.
I get it. If you you just start seeing a guy and he's like, I'm going to marry you. I also get how it could be all right, take several seats.
Several.
Man. Absolutely not. She liked him and everything, but she was a bit who do you think you are?
It was taped in New York too. And she just hated New York. She hated New York.
She didn't hate New York, but she didn't want to live there. Yeah. And he lived in New York and she lived in LA. And she was like, I also just turned down this huge career opportunity because I didn't want to live in New York. How's it going to look if I moved to New York for a man over my career? I think she was just jaded by love. And she just didn't. She thought he was going to want her to change.
She had quote unquote 2 failed marriages. And it was he just wasn't the right guy for you. But it was a different time. She was definitely jaded at this point.
In most cases, we say no means no.
Absolutely. Queen's podcast statement.
No means no. So in most cases, if a girl says she doesn't want to marry you, don't love bomb her and walk away.
That didn't stop him. That didn't stop him at all.
I know. While I was reading it, I was is this problematic? But it ended so nice that I guess it's fine.
Right.
This is the exception, not the rule.
All right. No. So Allen proposed 3 times. I remember watching the documentary on Netflix. They have one on Netflix. Go watch it. She literally was he just kept proposing over and over and over. He even wore the wedding ring on a little necklace and was you gonna marry me? Would just literally, it's so cute. It is so cute.
She'd walk into the building and be like, hey, Alan. And he'd be like, will you marry me? And she's like, oh, this again.
But the final time, he sent her a stuffed bunny on Easter with some earrings that were sapphire and some shit. And then obviously had the ring on it because he knew that she could never say no to a cute, helpless, fuzzy little animal.
And it worked.
They were married. They got hitched.
She was in LA. He was in New York. She got the gift. She called him up and he said hello. And she said, I do.
Yeah, I think she just said, so I think in the documentary, the thing was, this was just say yes, just say yes, just say yes. And she called him up on that day and was like, yes. And she just said yes. And he was like, oh.
And so they were married a few months later in June 1963. Later on, Betty would say that her only real regret in life is resisting Allen at the beginning. She said, I lost that year. I could have had a whole another year with him.
I think she regretted that.
She regretted putting her pride in her career before Allen, but how was she going to know that he was going to go on to be the love of her life?
And how did she know she was going to go on to have a career like that?
Still, yeah.
Like, seriously.
The two of them had a very, very happy marriage. So while we're on a high note, let's take a quick break, top off our drinks, and we'll be right back.
We have one more act for you this evening. I don't even need to say his name. Mr. Bob Dylan.
A Complete Unknown is now a Golden Globe and Critics' Choice nominee for Best Picture.
Bobby, what do you want to be?
Whatever it is they don't want me to be.
Timothy Chalamet astonishes as Bob Dylan in one of the best performances of the year.
Through the bumps of dime in your prime.
And critics rave Edward Norton is absolutely fantastic.
70,000 people are here, and Bobby is the reason for it.
They just want me singing Blowing in the Wind for the rest of my life.
Don't miss the movie critics are hailing 5 stars.
To be on your own.
It's pure cinematic magic.
Turn it down!
Play loud.
And named to AFI and the National Board of Review's top 10 films of the year.
Make some noise, BD. Track some mud on the carpet.
A Complete Unknown. Now playing only in theaters. Rated R. Under 17 and admitted without parent.
This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like to check the date of the big game first before you accidentally buy tickets on your 20th wedding anniversary and have to spend the next 20 years of your marriage making up for it. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
And we're back. Nathan, did you top off your dirty martini?
Yes, I did. Betty packs her bags and she's ready to go. And she moves her 2 dogs.
What was that song? Is that a song, or did you just make something up?
Bags are packed and I'm ready to go. I'm standing
Is that like an
here
existing
outside your door. I hate to realize it. I'm leaving on a jet plane. Don't know when I'll be back.
I'll be back again. Okay. Anyway.
Katie's like, is that a real song?
I didn't know if you were just like riffing, like skittery-bop-bop.
Maybe so. But Betty is on a jet plane, doesn't know when she'll be back again.
She takes her 2 dogs and she's moving in with Allen and his 3 kids.
Yeah. And then fate would have it that Password moves from New York to Los Angeles.
Woohoo! So she didn't have to live in New York very long.
Yeah, she got her way.
Yeah.
So they're an adorable TV power couple.
It's so cute on the first episode of Password that she's on after their honeymoon. At the end of the episode, he's like, Betty, what's the password or something like that? And she goes, home, Allen. Take me home.
Aww.
It's so adorable. But they were doing all kinds of guest stars, starring roles.
The Love Boat. Sorry, I'm in a singing mood.
That's okay. The Odd Couple. They were on tons of talk shows together. I watched this one talk show that they were on together called Tattletale, which it's very much like the Newlyweds show, but I don't think you have to be newlyweds to be on it. And they were just so fucking cute together.
They were like, they riffed off of each other really well.
Yeah.
They were able to I don't know. It was really
you could tell they were in love.
I know. 3rd time's the charm.
Yeah.
So in the early 70s, Betty's really good friend, Mary Tyler Moore,
maybe you've heard of her,
had one of the most popular TV shows, Amazing Writers. The writers in this show, I think, elevated TV in a way.
Did you ever watch
Yes.
the Mary Tyler Moore show?
Yes, it was genius.
Because when I was a kid, I fucking loved Nick at Night. I was not popular. I was not cool. And I was like really into Nick at Night. I remember loving the Mary Tyler Moore Show, but I haven't watched it since I was like 10 or something. And a lot of
I liked Nick at Night. I was really not popular.
I was not popular. I was bookish, to put it kindly. But I'm like, hey guys, did y'all watch I Dream of Jeannie last night?
I
And they're
love
like,
Lucy. I love Lucy. Come on, bitch.
But anyway, I didn't remember a whole lot of it. So this week, I watched a couple of Mary Tyler Moore shows. I was expecting it to be so much cheesier because a lot of older shows are cheesy when you watch them with like a modern gaze.
Lens, yeah.
And it still fucking slaps. It's a fucking hilarious show. There are some outdated stuff on it, of course, but it's really funny.
I know. And they wrote this character named Sue Ann. And spoiler-ish alert, Blanche from Golden Girls is actually based on Sue Ann. They wrote this new character for her. She's this older homemaker. She's super duper happy, but she's real slutty. And that's what is amazing. Like,
it's so funny.
Genius.
If you've never watched it, Mary Tyler Moore Show, Mary Tyler Moore is like a news producer, and they have this news segment on their show called The Happy Homemaker with Sue Ann. And Sue Ann is this character that when she's on camera, she's like, and this is how you make the perfect turkey. And she's just like this bubbly housewife. But then when the cameras turn off, she's sleeping with everyone's husband. You know, like
it's my brand. That is my brand. Like,
and the writers of it in the writers' room, they were like, we need someone so sweet, somebody disgustingly sweet. We need a Betty White type to play this.
Long story short, they got Betty White. So huge career move for Betty. Mm-hmm. Like, her role was meant to be this like one-time cameo, but she ended up being on the show for the next 4 years. She hadn't been in a TV sitcom in a recurring role in almost like 20 years. Mm-hmm. But at this point, it was like a whole new generation. We're getting to see her comedy, like her timing. Like, we've been talking about that. And when we tell you this girl had comedic timing, y'all, she is genius.
She's so good. She knows how to hold that silence until the exact right point.
And that's the timing that you need, and you bust out laughing. It's like, it's just that
the subtlety of the humor.
Genius.
And just how like, it's kind of something you can't even put into words. You have to go watch it. If you guys haven't watched her on the Mary Tyler Moore Show, I suggest you do so.
Brilliant. So she won an Emmy in 1975 again. And in 1976 for Best Supporting Actress in a Comedy again.
Right?
Second Emmy, but not the last.
It was her quote-unquote breakthrough role, even though she had been steadily acting for like the last 20 years. And I think it's so cool, though, that considered her breakthrough role, even though she's already a household name, was was when she was in her 50s.
I love it.
I love a good 30 under 30 list, but I also love hearing of people like breaking through in what they're passionate about later in life. A
cougar countdown.
So that Mary Tyler Moore Show went off the air in 1978, but Betty was still steadily working along with Allen. Like, they were still doing game shows. He was still hosting Password. They were still doing...
It's a fun gig. It's a fun gig. Like,
they were going on the Carol Burnett show. Her and Carol Burnett were buddies. Like, they were just a power couple, like we already said.
Yeah, and then tragedy struck.
I know, there's no fun way to transition into this either. It's just like they were on top of the world until they weren't in 1981.
He ended up being diagnosed with stomach cancer and passed away a year later, which honestly,
I don't even think
quick.
it was a whole year later. He was diagnosed in 81 and he died in 81.
But to be honest with you, that's how I would want to go. Like, I wouldn't want it to be dragged out over 5 years. But it was just 5 days shy of their 18th anniversary. Why does she do this to me?
I know. But Betty was obviously devastated. This was the love of her life. She never married again. As far as we know, she never had any kind of romantic relationship again. She would tell Larry King later down the line when he was like, why didn't you remarry? She goes, once you've had the best, who needs the rest? Also, I feel like it was also, I don't know about you. I was lucky enough to know 3 of my great-grandmothers. And 2 of my great-grandmothers lost their husbands in the 70s. And even though they lived until the 2000s, they never remarried. So I think it's also a bit of a generational thing of once you've had the
that is my
love of your
husband.
Life. Yeah.
My husband.
It's just like, why would you?
You have to say it with a southern voice.
The husband.
My husband.
But I think it was also a generational thing also. She was heartbroken, as you would be.
Yeah, and she lay low for a couple of years. Like, from his death until 1983, we just don't see a whole lot of her. She thought, like, some people thought that she may retire at this point. I mean she's 60s. 60s.
She's been working nonstop since she was 18, so they've got some money stored away. She could retire. It's not a money thing, because if she wanted to retire now, she's got several shows in syndication. She could have retired at this point if she wanted to, but that's not her lifestyle. That is not her thing.
Yeah, she doesn't like to lay low, does she? After a year of recovering from heartache, she was back, and she stayed back.
She did. She came back with a new game show called Just Men, which
sounds like my Saturday night.
I've missed this one. It was before our time, and I guess it didn't stick around for too long. But she won an Emmy for it. She became the first woman to ever win an Emmy for being a game show host. So first up here.
I know, right? And she got public with her animal, not activism. So she was even like, I'm not a feminist activism. I'm not activist. She was an advocate. So
I wonder why she made that, because she did go out of her way all the time to be like, I'm not an activist, I'm an advocate. I wonder if that's because like activist sometimes has like a negative connotation with it, like with extremists.
That's what I was totally thinking is like activist means I'm going out and burning down the fence because I'm doing this, as opposed to an advocate who's like, hey, I'm here to support you as long as it's legal.
Yeah. She'd always been a huge animal lover, but now she's like, I've got a platform, I've got the income, I'm going to be really open about my support of animals, her animal advocacy.
Oh, it's so cute. Like, she's watched the Netflix documentary. She's feeding a grizzly bear.
Oh my gosh. So in the book that I didn't read, I listened to the audio book, If You Asked Me. She talks a lot about all the pets that she's had over her life, and she narrates it, which is a delightful way to spend your time listening to Betty White read her own book. Just the way she talks about her animals is so passionate and so compelling and so sweet.
Katie's in love.
I'm in love. If I wasn't already, I am now. But she talks about just how she would donate money to causes of like getting people that needed working dogs, like seeing eye dogs that couldn't afford them, donating money so that they could get the working dogs that they need.
Betty was on the board of a handful of animal welfare charities and organizations, as well as the LA Zoo board of directors.
She worked towards funding like animals that were police dogs or other kind of working dogs. She worked towards charities that funded finding them good homes after they transitioned, like were too old to be working dogs anymore.
Yeah.
Herself, she adopted a seeing eye dog that had been retired named Pontiac, who was a very handsome golden retriever.
Would you do the handsome squish face?
Yes.
So one story really loved was Betty was offered a part in the Jack Nicholson movie from the 90s, As Good as It Gets.
Do you remember that movie?
I vaguely remember it.
Yeah, like I kind of remembered it, so I had to look it up. It has Helen Hunt in as well, and apparently it was like a huge fucking movie. Like it was a smash hit at the box office.
So in the movie, someone throws a dog down a garbage chute, which, what? Like Betty sees this and is like, I can't do this.
In the movie, the dogs ends up being just fine, but she's like, what if a kid sees this in this movie and recreates it because they think it's funny, and then that dog is hurt? I can't live with myself knowing I had anything to do with that.
She sees her influence.
So she wouldn't be in the film, so that's why she is not in the Jack Nicholson smash hit As Good as It Gets.
So anyway, back to the 80s, because we love a good shoulder pad and some tacky colors.
Some bright blue eyeshadow.
Big earrings. So after a few recurring roles on sitcoms here and there, she is sent the script for a TV show, you know, you love. It's called The Golden Girls.
Thank you for being a friend.
Ba, 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 ba.
Who doesn't love The Golden Girls? I know, like, when it was actually on, it was a little before our time, but we grew up with it in syndication every afternoon after school, every sick day.
It was just life.
Every summer, we'd watch The Golden Girls. It was just a show that I thought was funny. My mom thought was funny. My grandma thought was funny. We'd all watch it
Everybody
together.
was on the same page.
It is so iconic.
And she was offered, guess the role that she was offered, Katie. I know you know the answer.
Well, based on her Sue Nevins character earlier, they thought that she would play the sex pot Blanche perfectly.
I think she would have been great. I think she would have nailed it. I think she would have knocked it out of the park because it's Betty White.
Yeah.
Like, for real.
She would have done great, but the director was like, you know what, Betty, I want you to play Rose, the dumb one.
And Rue McClanahan, you play Blanche.
Yes.
And Rue just hit it out of the park. And then I think it was one of those moments where you play the opposite. Of what you're supposed to, and then it just clicks.
Rose was just the fun. Like, they're all funny. All four of the main characters in this show are hilarious, but Rose is just a standalone kind of character. She just enhanced the show.
Nobody expected this to be a hit.
No.
Like, this was about four old ladies in Florida retiring, but
this show is because all of the actresses on it had been working for years, and they were like, after this show, these four women are all gonna retire. This is gonna be the nail in their coffins. Nobody is gonna watch this show about four old ladies living in Florida. But
hindsight is 2020.
People did.
They made gold.
The Golden Girls aired from 1985 to 1992, and it was a huge hit.
Everybody loves this show. I fall asleep to it every night, and Betty is just amazing. And once again, a whole new generation is introduced to Betty White. This is like, guys, we're working on like 3 or 4 generations now.
She keeps making her new breakthrough role. New generations keep being introduced to her and falling in love with her.
And she's that woman that can give you the ultimate punchline. Like, she's so good at doing that. She wins an Emmy.
Again. In 1986, she won an Emmy again, 10 years after her second Emmy from The Mary Tyler Moore Show.
So that's 2. That's just 2 casual Emmys.
Well, that's 4 altogether now. Yeah. She was nominated for an Emmy every single year that The Golden Girls was on. And in the end, all 4 women would win an Emmy.
In 1992, B. Arthur decided to leave the show. And honestly, guys, you really can't do that show without any of them.
No.
Any of them.
No. Well, they
So-
tried to do a spin-off without B. Arthur called The Golden Palace.
Not great.
They replaced B. Arthur with Don Cheadle. Probably not something Don Cheadle's put on a lot of resumes. It was not.
So there are some whispers that Betty and B had a feud that we'll maybe talk a little bit more about in our Patreon episode.
Also, I think B. Arthur was like, I want the show to go out while it's still popular. Because I mean, look at the last few seasons of The Office or Friends.
Oh.
And while people are still like you, and so I think it was
Katie, use lube.
Well, am I lying? Oh my
No,
God.
you're not.
Like the last season of Friends was fucking painful. So I get it.
Office
Go out while
too.
go out while people still like you. And so I get why B did it.
Okay, is it wild that we're this far into an episode and we're just now talking about what she's famous for, like Golden
or what she's
Girls?
most famous for, like what everybody knows
right?
her for is the Golden Girls, and we've been talking for an hour and a half, and we're just now getting to
I know, right? And she's now like 63. That's awesome.
She got the gig that has made her most famous when she was 63. Like we were saying, don't stop chasing your passion. Go after it.
It'll happen. Okay, but now it's over and she's 70, so it's obviously time to retire, right?
No, of course not. It's Betty fucking White. She's not retiring.
She's got another 20-something years left in her.
Again, we're not going to list everything she did after the Golden Girls because we're just listing stuff. But during the 90s to the early 2000s, she basically guest starred on everything.
Yeah.
Family Guy, that 70s show, Boston Legal, game shows, talk shows. She just never stopped working.
Work, 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 work.
Work, work. If you're Betty, work, 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 work.
So she also started putting out her memoir. So there's 3 altogether.
She co-wrote a novel. This woman did not take days off. I feel like that mentality from the Hollywood on Television show just never left her.
Right.
She's like, I gotta always be working. I gotta be working 5.5 hours a day, 6 days a week.
Go. Yep. I completely agree.
The book that I listened to, the audiobook, she won Grammy for best spoken word.
For reading a book.
Yes, for reading her audiobook. So now we've got Emmys, SAG Awards, Grammy. I bet she never expected to win a Grammy, but Grammy award winning Betty White.
Well, but she was a good singer back in her day.
That's true.
I had listened to her sing and been like, damn, girl.
You're not wrong. So let's fast forward to the year 2010. This was a huge year in Betty's career at the young age of 88. She had a career renaissance, as people like to put it.
She had just done that movie Proposal with Sandra Bullock.
Have you seen that movie?
It's so cute.
It's cheesy romantic comedy, but
I'm here for it.
Yeah, I'm not lactose intolerant. It's fine. After that, she got asked to do that Super Bowl commercial, the Snickers commercial. I laugh every time I see that commercial.
Oh, is that the one where he was like...
They're playing football, and it's like Betty
White
like,
gets
stop
tackled. Riding me.
You're playing like Betty White out there. And then she goes, that's not what your girlfriend said last night. And I swear to God, every time she says, that's not what your girlfriend said last night, I can't help but laugh. It's fucking hilarious.
It is genius.
So
after that commercial, some guy in San Antonio, Texas, has this petition that wants Betty White to host SNL. So Betty had turned down SNL for a couple of times in her life, but her agent convinced her to do it. And guys, I remember it. I watched it.
I remember that one too. It was a Mother's Day special, and they had a bunch of women that had been off of SNL for years, like Tina Fey, Amy Poehler, Maya Rudolph. These people had all already left SNL, but they came back to do the Mother's Day special with Betty White.
No, but she did tell her agent during the SNL rehearsals and everything. She was like, never again. But I mean, she's 88 and live television is very stressful.
In her book, she talked about specifically like the quick changes and having to read cue cards stressed her out the most.
I would be stressed out just being there. So that same year, Betty starred in her last TV show called Hot in Cleveland.
I never saw that. I didn't have.
It's cute. It's
cute. I've never had TV Land, which is what I think it comes on. It's never been on any of the cable packages I had. So, but I know it looks cute. So good for her.
It is. It is cute. So in 2010 was also the year that Betty spoke out about her support for the LGBTQ plus alphabet soup community. So many of her friendships in Hollywood leading up to, like, she's always been a supporter. Yeah. Like, we can't deny that. Golden Girls is even, like, obviously LGBTQ plus, like, forward.
And she had a long friendship with Liberace as well.
Also important to remember that in 2010, gay marriage was not legal. So, guys, remember that. It was a hot topic. So
it was a lot more controversial to support than it is now.
And she was quoted as saying, "I don't care who anybody sleeps with." Round of applause.
Yes.
If a couple has been together all that time, I think it's fine if they want to get married.
Yep.
We're giving applause.
True statements.
Mind your business, take care of your affairs, and don't worry about other people so much.
Mic drop. Fucking
applause.
Drop.
She lives for the applause, like Lady Gaga. Keep going, Katie.
No. During 2010, someone asked her, what do you think about this career renaissance you're having? And she's like, what the fuck are you talking about? I have never stopped working. And she hasn't. If you look at her IMDb, there's really, whenever when Allen died, she took a year or so off. But besides that, there aren't really any gaps in her resume.
I remember people saying to her, like, "Oh, you made a comeback," and she was like, "I never left.
Comeback. Yeah,
I never left here the entire time."
Something that I love this story. Something else that happened in 2010, which she said was the highlight of her comeback year, was that in November 9th, 2010, her first career aspiration came true, and I'm getting goosebumps. The USDA Forest Service Department had a ceremony in Betty's honor and made her an honorary forest ranger. They gave her a hat and everything. She'd always wanted to be a forest ranger. Y'all. The chief of the U.S. Forest Service told her, "You're an inspiration for all of us to never give up on your dreams." And she said that during the ceremony, she could feel her father's presence. She could feel him there being proud of her.
Oh, my little gay heart is twinkling.
If that isn't the sweetest fucking thing you've ever heard, like, that is so...
He would have been so proud.
I love this journey for her so much.
I know. I'm not crying. You're crying.
I'm crying a little bit.
I know, me too. So Betty carried on working as an actress and working for charitable causes for years. Her last performance as an actress was in 2019, lending her voice to the Toy Story movie franchise. But with the hit of COVID-19, soon she laid low afterwards.
We were all like, yes, Betty White, stay home.
Yeah, though this was a horribly divisive time in this country. We've been through a lot in the last 2 years, but it seems like everybody loves Betty White.
It was the one thing that America could agree on,
I know.
Masks, vaccines, we can argue. Betty White, no argument. We love her. And I feel like we needed something like that. And she was that for America.
She's immortal. She'll live on my silver screen in my television home. Golden Girls for life. I love her. But like you were saying, sadly,
on New Year's Eve, December 31st, 2021, Betty passed away quietly at her home just 18 days before her 100th birthday. Her last words were of Allen, her husband.
I know. I read that and I wanted to cry.
Let's talk about this woman's legacy.
She is in the Guinness Book of World Records for the longest female career in entertainment, and you better eat it.
8 Emmys, a Grammy, 3 SAGs, a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame.
She's in the Television Hall of Fame. Y'all, we really had to skim over this career and the names of the TV shows and the achievements that she did because there's just so many. Like, she's insanely talented, beautiful, gorgeous. And who told you weren't photogenic? Fuck them.
They lied. But now finally got to retire at the age of 99.
And now she finally gets to retire and rest with her husband and her hundreds of pets that she's had over the years. And cheers to the love of her life, Allen.
God. Cheers to what an amazing life. What a don't give a fuck attitude. I am going to do what I need to do, but do it with love and gratitude and just how to live a life as a class act to fucking Betty White. Raise a glass.
That fucking sparkle. That sparkle in her eye. Cheers, bitches. Clink.
All right, we'll catch you next time, guys.
Have you ever wished that you had a direct line to your pediatrician to ask all the questions that constantly crop up while parenting? We sure have. That's why we launched the Bites of Health podcast. Every morning, we'll answer a commonly asked pediatric question in 5 minutes or less. You can tune in while you're making your second cup of coffee or from the school drop-off line. So be sure to tune in to Bites of Health, streaming now.